Victoria Electric Vehicle Association. Welcome to everyone. This is our 286th Zoom or gathering, as well as pre-Zoom gatherings, I guess. And that's a number that I just sort of make up, but it is, I think, pretty close to the real way. We've been doing it for 10 years now. This is our 10th anniversary year, so we should really be trying to think of some fun stuff that we can maybe do. Let's wait till the weather's just a tad warmer and drier, perhaps, for an outdoor get-together around that possible event. I don't even know.
Not another 10-day rally?
It's on the schedule.
It is, yeah, it's on the
really?
docket. Another rally is on the docket, but it got pushed off as well. But we're working on it. It's still there.
Good.
As is Eco Night, we're still waiting to see what happens there, eh, Jim?
Actually, I got a confirmation last night from the Royals that they're pretty positive it could go fully ahead.
Glenn is here, Glenn Gary. He's our director in charge of the whole research machine. Most of you folks know him. For the new folks, perhaps Dave Kenway is our secretary. He's not here today. Julian Sale, well, we spoke to him yesterday. He sounded like he was going to be able to drop in. He's busy, so did he just arrive? Right on. He's a director at the club as well. I'm David Grove, president. Yep. And we see lots of regulars here today. So again, all welcome. This is great. I know we all love Zoom so much. It does give us this opportunity. We have typically some announcements right now. I don't really have anything. Anyone want to contribute to an announcement segment here? No, we're all good for now. Things will come up later. So as usual, we have a guest. We're about to introduce him, but first I'd just like to recognize Jim Henshaw, who's pulled this together for us each and every time. The newsletter every week. I don't know if anybody have ever done that kind of a thing in their lives, but it's a bit of a.
I don't know if anybody ever reads it. Is that what you were going to say?
It's a highlight of my week. But anyway, thanks very much, Jim, for all that you do with that aspect of the club effort. Because it really does, the communications aspect really does, in my opinion, tie it together and make it function, without which it's hard to know where we'd all be and where we'd go. So that's a big feature. Not to mention, I get to meet up with them occasionally for coffee and chew the fat about all sorts of subjects. So that's good stuff. Yeah, so I guess we'll forge ahead here. We have a guest, a visitor. I guess I'll let Glenn Gary do the introduction today because the two of you will be going on. Jeremie's joining us. He's here, and we can all say hello to him. But Glenn, could you do that? Could you do an introduction? You know Jeremie better than I do.
Yeah, we have Jeremie Bernardin here, and today I think he's still in Halifax. Yeah, he's in Halifax. He has been involved in electric vehicles for a number of years. We'll get a little more of that detail when we dig into his personal CV. Yeah, and here in BC, he was doing EVs, and then he went back out to the East Coast, and he got involved in the business side of EVs. So he's got a lot to say about electric vehicles, very knowledgeable, and we'll kick off with that. Jeremie, say hi.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Glenn. First of all, I'd like to say that I've known Glenn for quite some time, and I've known a few people on this call, even
35 to 40
for some time. Actually, Kelly Carmichael in particular, I've known for many years. Kind of fun to see some names that I recognize. So I don't know where to start. I guess I'll give a brief background on how I got involved in EVs and then how I came about to start All EV with a couple partners. I guess I'll start. I lived in Vancouver for 12 years, and I found a job posting on Kijiji, and I started working for Subaru Canada when I was 19 years old, long hair, a bit of a hippie, my station wagon. And I was a national product specialist. And primarily because I was French, they just needed somebody who was able to travel and speak two languages. So if anything, luck played a massive part. And I got really involved in environmental activism in my college time. And over the years, after working for Subaru, I was working for a driving academy, and I was an instructor on racetracks. So there's some pretty strong cognitive dissonance. I'm a huge motorsport guy, but I brought, recycling to my college. I'm an environmentalist. And so it was really, really challenging to navigate that mental space. And in 2011, I got a contract with Mercedes-Benz to do a tour of their upcoming or their pre-production electric vehicles, the little smarts. So I went from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland, across the country to 48 dealerships presenting the technology. And at that point, I had worked for many different brands, and I had known how to do test drives and things like that. But that really kickstarted my career in the world of EVs. And I eventually worked for the Emotive BC campaign for the regional government. And then I worked for Emotive BC on the provincial side, which is where I met Kelly Carmichael and a lot of people back then. This would have been in 2015. And in 2017, and I worked for Motorino Electric, the scooters and electric bicycles and things like that. So then I moved out east. My partner, Jolene, went to university here. So we just packed up everything and moved out east, and I didn't know a single soul here. I went and worked in an energy research lab that does a lot of stuff on renewable energy. And I started lobbying the provincial government here to get electric vehicle education campaign like British Columbia, and just Atlantic Canada as a whole is like a decade behind BC. Like, I'm not kidding, it's a decade behind. So there's a lot of work to be done. And at the same time, I founded, along with 4 other people, so we're all co-founders, the Electric Vehicle Association of Atlantic Canada, which is how I know Glenn, through Electric Vehicle Society's EV Leaders Council. So, all of the different associations from the across the country meet up once a month to talk about ways to collaborate, keeping each other up to speed. And it was really useful for me out here when creating an association, and we built it in a umbrella fashion. So each province kind of fits under the umbrella, and then that umbrella fits under the national umbrella, and we're able to do a lot of work. And I chaired that council for 3.5 years. And when I started that association, and I'm still the president of it, I was going to the province to ask for funding, and I got $1 million over 2 years to do electric vehicle education and awareness. So I left the research lab, and I ran the campaign called Next Ride, and I got some federal funding to do a lot of websites and things like that to promote electric vehicles. You have no idea how far behind Atlantic Canada is in terms of awareness, in terms of availability, in terms of dealerships that are approved to sell them, in terms of infrastructure. So there's been a pretty steep hill to climb. But this association that we started with, 5 of us, we just cracked 1,500 members last month. So it's been growing. Next Ride's grown tremendously. And after 8 months of starting Next Ride, I was on the radio to talk about electric cars, and there was another gentleman that was on the radio who was an electric vehicle expert, and we ended up getting along so much that we just started chatting tons, and we decided to start a company called All EV. So I was running this provincial campaign, and then we decided to start a business. So I was already kind of up to my eyeballs a little bit, and then I jumped into a whole world that I had no idea the pain I was going to be in shortly after. But we started this company called All EV Canada. And at first, we were rebuilding damaged cars, electric vehicles that have been salvaged. And that was a terrible business plan. That was a really bad idea. But we learned so much. And you can't finance a rebuild title. You can't, there's no warranty. Tesla, there's no supercharging. So it was a flawed plan. But we went in really hard, and maybe I'll start my slideshow. Do I have permissions to share my screen?
Yes, you do.
All right, this is going to be good enough. Can you guys see my screen well?
No, yeah. Now it's good.
Okay, good enough. It's not full screen. I apologize. I don't know what I'm pressing here. It's not working. But so we moved into a new building a month ago. We are now on Car Alley. We're the largest electric vehicle dealership in the country. We have 110 electric vehicles in inventory. I have 46 Teslas. I'm operating in 4 provinces in Atlantic Canada. And we're hiring at a rate of about 2 staff per week for the past month. So we're on a pretty incredible growth rate right now. We were acquired, so I'm no longer the owner of the company, along with my partners. We sold to the Steel Auto Group, which is the largest auto group in the country by number of dealers. And I would say the only auto group in the country who's actually serious about electrification and moving forward with that, which is a breath of fresh air. As many of you know, not all dealers are very open to that. So this is where we're at now. Let me see if I can show you where we started. So I'm going to skip forward. This is when we merged and we acquired. To the left is Mike Kenny. He had a dealership in Prince Edward Island, and we acquired him about 18 months ago, or a year and a half ago. So we became 2 dealerships. But the building behind us, now if I go back, this building here, we painted that. I mean, it's been a lot of work, and that's where we were rebuilding Teslas and taking batteries apart, taking motors apart. We're doing a lot of engineering work. We pivoted the company where we're looking at doing some consulting, potentially retrofits. We had several pivots with the company. And so this is an industrial section of Dartmouth, which is like the equivalent of North Vancouver to Vancouver, right? So across the bridge, a little bit less well-known, and in the industrial park. But we were kind of doing something very unique. The only place in Atlantic Canada you could get your car serviced that, wasn't from an OEM. And we were doing things like selling batteries, selling parts, doing all sorts of stuff. And then we acquired the dealership in Prince Edward Island, which was a little hole in the closet, not this place. It was a really tiny spot. And we eventually rented this space out, which is right against a highway, great visibility. So that was a pretty big move for us to do that. That would have been last year. So we were 3 at first. So on the right, Dave Giles is an electric vehicle kind of education and technical expert. He's a master technician. He writes curriculums for electric vehicle training for Red Seal technicians. I'm more on the public facing marketing, product knowledge side. And Jeff, right next to me, he is just a phenomenal businessman. So his last company had 490 employees. He knows nothing about cars, doesn't even like cars, but he loves challenges, and he's just incredibly talented and a go-getter and very marketing and brand minded. And the big takeaway we've had was we built a brand, and we were a marketing machine, and that's how we got a lot of success. And Mike, who's squinting like crazy in that photo from PEI, he was excellent at sourcing vehicles, and which is why we acquired his dealer. He was just so skilled at finding cars and bringing them in. So the 4 of us made a pretty darn good team, and we were in the media a lot. We're on the radio, we're on TV, we're creating content, and that really started a lot of traction. We were not cash flow positive by any mean. It was a extremely stressful 2 years, and it's worth noting, it's only been about 2 years since we started. It would have been on January that we moved into that building, but we would have incorporated 26 months ago. So it's been a very short, wild ride, but it's been very strategic. So we did a lot of business planning. We had a business coach. You can see in the screen, what's the number one thing that must be accomplished in the next quarter? And then we had all the next quarters planned, and we had the next 3 years planned, and then we had the next 7 years planned, and then we had our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goals. And then we had, our mission statements and our values, and, we had our cash flow projections, which is a shot in the dark. We really don't know what we're doing, but we make a plan and we aim for it. And this is what Jeff brought to this. Jeff is just a phenomenal CEO and a brilliant mind. And we brought some heavy hitters, some business coaches to really keep us on our toes. And, I've never worked more 13-hour days, 6 days a week in my life. It was extremely hard work, but we really got some traction. And this is what it looks like to own a business. This is more this than anything else, where, we're fixing everything. We're painting buildings, we're fixing things, we're patching, we're doing marketing, we're everything from we're website designers all of a sudden, and we don't know anything about websites. So it's been a pretty wild ride. And I don't have photos of my New Brunswick location or my Newfoundland location. I didn't have time, but I thought I'd throw in a couple photos of Newfoundland. I mean, some of you can tell by the colors, and that's in Newfoundland again, where, and one of the things you can see there, the branding, the electric car store. And you got to remember, in Atlantic Canada, you don't see as many electric cars everywhere. It was really important for us to kind of be understood to be like, this is the place you go for anything electric. And remember, we pivoted from rebuilding these cars to just being a certified pre-owned dealership. And we do really unique things like battery health reports. So you know exactly what you're buying. If you're buying a 2016 Nissan Leaf, as Kelly has experience with, some of those have batteries that degrade faster than others. It depends on your charging pattern. So knowing what your charge level's at is quite important. And in a Leaf, of course, you have the little bars, but if you don't know how to read that the first bar is bigger than the other bars, having a proper report really does make a pretty big difference. And of course, we have a 300-point inspection on all of our electric vehicles. So it's really catered to electric. We don't have anything that's gas in our shop at all. So it's a specialty shop. Sorry, turn my phone off here. But we branded it as the electric car store. This is the place that people come to just to buy an electric car, to learn about electric cars. And we really pivoted our company towards education. And I don't have enough slides that show all of the electric vehicle education sessions that we did and are doing, EV 101s and webinars and seminars and, EV rentals and things like that really help to educate the public. Got a couple photos of Prince Edward Island here. You'll see we have quite a bit more renewable energy, that's not part of the base load, whereas, BC, you got hydro. Here we have coal. So there's a lot more efforts to get solar out here. This is Moncton. No, not Moncton. This is St. John, New Brunswick, and our stores in Fredericton. And right now our store is more of like a little trailer than anything, but we have some really cool concepts, and we're pretty far down the road of building. It's going to be one of the first carbon neutral dealerships in the country. And it's going to be built out of shipping containers with water collection, with solar, with, community charging. And so, part of what we're doing is we're change makers, right? Like we're really breaking the shape and format of a dealership. And in the grand scheme of things, the Steel Auto Group that bought us out, they're enormous. They have like 62 dealerships, right? They have 2,300 employees. We're peanuts. We're nothing compared to their size, but we get more press than any of their other stores, right? Like we're in the news all the time, and even their executives, people can't stop talking about the things we're doing, and we're disruptors. And internally, interesting, there's a lot more resistance from the 61 other dealerships, or well, actually not 61 since we have 4 of them, but the 58 other dealerships. There's a lot more resistance and hesitance, but now we're really starting to pick up traction, and they're starting to listen to us. And part of what we do is electric vehicle education, and we get grants. And this is what Dave built. We now have it actually on tires, so you can roll it, and there's a steering column. We've changed it a little bit, but we got an education grant in Nova Scotia and in PEI to do some tours and to show, how electric vehicles work, how they're different. And I even have one that's just the motor that's cut away in our YouTube channel. Like on one video, we have just shy of 800,000 views of taking apart a Model 3 motor. So some pretty unique and neat things, and we're very few in the country. Weber Motors or Weber School in, oh gosh, I think it's in DC in the United States, is doing some really cool stuff. And they're going more in depth than we are for a multitude of things. But this here is a pretty unique setup, and we've been touring Atlantic Canada with it. So you can see it here on tires with Dave. This is Dave's contraption, and now it's hooked up with the whole dash, and it shows the HVAC system and the battery and thermal management, and even our heat exchanger off the electric motor, which is how you heat and you heat the battery pack. And this is a Tesla Model 3 long range rear-wheel drive, just by the way. And this is in Fredericton. So we'd go to these, shows, these EV, Electric Avenue, shows, and we have e-bikes, and yeah, we just kind of welcome the public to be learning about EVs and hopefully buying EVs from us, because that's how we keep the lights on. So that's Dave. That's the electric Model 3, the electric motor for the Model 3. And you can see the little blue bits. That's actually 3D printed. So the whole thing's opened, right? So you can look inside. You can see all of the little cooling fins for the inverter. You can see where all the connectors are. You can see the logic boards. You can see the oil jackets that go all around the outside of the electric motor, which is how it harnesses or collects the heat off the electric motor. And the Model 3s have an ability to field the motor, turn it on while applying the brakes, so the car can't move forward, but the electric motor is fielded. It creates heat. So and through its little oil jackets all around it, it's able to harness that heat and use the there's actually right next to Dave's left hand. That's your heat exchanger, right? And then it goes through a glycol system and heats the battery pack. Because as some of you know, or most of you know, temperature is an incredibly important factor with these cars, right? So especially with the batteries, is what I'm getting to. So you need to thermally manage that, and that's how the Model 3 manages that. We were doing some really neat stuff, working with the ministers, with that's the mayor of Charlottetown, that's the environmental minister, and the car on the right, CAA. When I was with the Clean Foundation, which is the equivalent of Fraser Basin Council, running the Next Ride campaign, so the public awareness campaign, I formed a partnership with CAA, and we bought a Model 3 with a government grant. And so I had kind of mixed that, and I was wearing all sorts of hats, where I'm wearing a jacket that says Next Ride, but I brought an all EV car to a government meeting. But it was just to bring more vehicles and more awareness, and letting the Minister of Environment test drive these cars and really engaging with him. And lo and behold, a year later, the most generous EV incentive for used and for new, it's one of the most generous, launched, right? You get $5,000 plus a level 2 charger for both new and used in PEI. So it really did have a pretty significant impact, all these activities that we did. And then we tour around, take photos. If any of you have been to PEI, that's Cow's Ice Cream. It's kind of iconic. And so now we're flipping back to the original dealership, where, we installed a big patio door, like window, sliding door, and then you could take it off its hinges and take the door out, and we create some ramps for the cars to come into the dealership, which was a terrible idea. I should have never put a patio door. We should get a commercial door, because taking out, unscrewing, anyways, it was a disaster, but it worked. And here I am laying out with some spare floor where the cars could go and how it could all fit in. And, we just had a couple desks, and we're just doing everything we could to keep the momentum going and keep pushing. And doing really innovative things too. This is another educational tool. We have a Model 3 that's cut in half, like along the side, and you can see, that's the front, but well, you can see there's no engine, but and the HVAC systems there and some cooling systems are there, and it's empty, and there's the frunk. But in the back, in the sub trunk, where a gas tank is, and Dave goes into much more details because he's more knowledgeable than I, but the types of metals and the types of welds that are slightly different on a Tesla, and really being able to showcase that. And in the back seat, if you were to just take the seat out, you have what's called the penthouse. And in a Chevy Bolt or a Hyundai Kona, when you lift the hood, all the electronics, your charge inverters and your charge controllers and all that stuff is under the hood. But with the Tesla, it's behind, or it's under the seat of the rear passengers. So when we lift that and we cut half of the casing off, we can kind of see the electronics. And then where the footwell is, we cut into that and cut into the battery case to show the cells, the battery cells. So it's a really unique, very, very different, demonstration tool of the technology. And on our right, we've had a lot of engineering students that have come work for us that was working on that.
Yeah, all those videos when you guys are doing the cutaways and the explainers are amazing. I've loved those.
Yeah, and you know, if we wouldn't have started with that bad idea of rebuilding cars, we would have never been able to do that. And so we really did leverage that. We didn't make any mistakes that we didn't grow from and leverage, right? We've been quite fortunate for that. And but again, those weren't money-making experiences or avenues. It didn't help get us out of debt, right? And anyway, so a couple neat things there. Let me see if I can go. And then, yeah, this is a video. So this is Dave doing a presentation to, I think this was, I forget which one this was, in the States and in Canada. And we did a lot of like webinars and things. But this is Dave holding his laptop camera, because we didn't have always a good camera setup, and showing the motor by holding his laptop, and it's hilarious. Dave does really crazy things, and it's pretty amazing. He'll take a level 2 charger and he'll throw it in a bucket of water, shake it and plug it in the car, and just shows, you know, and he explains how that's not dangerous, right? And how, you know, explaining how the ground fault works and the technology in the car and in the charger. So he does all sorts of really neat things. Dave also won the Grand Nationals for drag racing in 1991. So him and I talk about things that go fast often. So we have a really good dynamic, him and I working together. That might have been the end there of all of my photos that I put together. Let me just see if there was anything else that I missed, but I think that's yeah, that's all I put together for this one. I'll stop sharing my screen, but it gives you guys a bit of an idea of, you know, what we've done, where we're at, and Glenn had asked me where are we going. Well, with the Steel Auto Group, you know, we sold for a couple of reasons. I mean, for one, we opened our doors to the public the week before COVID started. So you want to talk about starting a business on hard mode? Like, yeah, that was incredibly challenging. And we discovered that to grow a business takes a gargantuous amount of capital to grow a dealership business in particular, just because of the cost of these cars, right? To hold an inventory. So our goal was always to grow, to be, you know, in more provinces than just Nova Scotia and PEI. And we had started partnering with the Steel Auto Group, and when they acquired us last July, we started growing right away. So, you know, we added New Brunswick and Newfoundland, but where I think things are going to keep growing is expertise in electric. Is like the amount of calls we get from, like, we have Ford Canada is reaching out to us and about expertise about, you know, fixing things or their systems. You know, we have companies like, you know, the amount of opportunity that we have to tie ourselves with, you know, Chinese brands, Geely or Rivian, or, you know, we're a little bit too late for the Rivians, but there's a lot of potential for us to grow in that space and to keep the all EV brand. We started bringing in e-bikes and electric motorcycles, and you know, there's electric surfboards, there's you know, Damon motorcycles, there's all sorts of different brands that, you know, we'd be interested in growing. But we also have to be very careful to grow in a controlled manner that makes sense, that's cash flow positive. You know, do I want to grow into other provinces outside of Atlantic Canada? Personally, heck yes, as long as it keeps making sense and as long as we have the internal resources, primarily human resources, to help support us, right? And I'd love to be in the Quebec market and the Ontario market and to keep growing, you know, across the country. And I think if you know, if in 10 years, I'm not in every single province in the country, I did something wrong, right? So that's kind of a little bit where we're going and our mindset. But it's certainly challenging right now with used inventory being more expensive than new in many cases, where, and it's not the dealers that are choosing that, it's auctions, right? It's where you buy your cars, and the whole microchip shortage has made it phenomenally complicated. But with the Steel Auto Group, we have a lot of good platforms behind us that help us get a lot of data. The amount of data we have is pretty phenomenal. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to continuing, you know, to keep on keeping on, essentially. And my role within the company has shifted a whole bunch, but as of a few days ago, my title is now Business Development Manager. So I'm a lot more forward thinking and seeing where we're heading. How do we partner? How do we work with municipalities? Municipalities that have, a target of 100% EV by 2030, and they currently have, 1% of their 800 car fleet. Those are really big challenges and partners to work with, and that's where kind of we fit in. Anyways, I've talked for a long time right now. If anybody has questions, jump in.
I got a couple for you. So it's just to say it's really fortunate that your partner took you to a part of the country where you could be the man from 10 years in the future and help out Atlantic Canada go down this path 10 years faster, maybe. Having lived on the East Coast, I kind of know where you're coming from. But no, that's awesome. And all the challenges of being the small business trying to expand and everything, and doing something new, that's massive. Now, Steel Auto Group, did you approach them or did they approach you? And if they approached you, who was the smart guy there, or girl?
Good question. So I had approached them when I worked on the provincial funded campaign, and I had done this in BC. I tried to get all the dealerships involved, and North Shore Kia was one of the partners we had on. We had Brian Jessel BMW. We had some partners there, but there's also a lot of resistance, right? Like it's not like they were all in at all. It was, we got a bit of marketing money, let's do a little bit. But there was a guy there at the at the New Car Dealership Association, Pat something. Hold on, Pat who?
Pat Quealy. The guy who said there was no, in 2018, said there was no demand for EVs.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Pat's his first. It's Quayle though. It's something Quayle.
That was Pat.
Blair.
Anyway,
Blair.
yeah.
Blair Quayle. He's the
Blair,
president of the. Yeah.
Mm.
All to say, there's lots of resistance in BC, and that was way ahead. Whereas in Nova Scotia, the Steel Auto Group, it's a really interesting group. It's run very differently. It's owned by one person, Rob Steele, but all of his businesses run independently, and they all compete against each other. And Atlantic Canada is funny. There's like two groups that own like everything. It's like the Irvings in New Brunswick that own like 90% of the province. Well, in Nova Scotia, there's the O'Regans and the Steel Auto Group. And the O'Regans, there's one guy who's the general manager of all of the stores. And, one way to describe it is they use one brush and one color to paint all stores, right? It's like everything is very much, whereas the Steel Auto Group is very entrepreneurial. It's how do you outdo each other? How do you out innovate? And how do you become dominant in your space? And so everything's very competitive, yet collaborative, but there's it's quite competitive. But I had reached out to them to say, hey, I want press vehicles. I want loaner vehicles. We're doing, innovative ways to do test drives across the province. Next Ride, it was built upon the platform that we'd have a team traveling the entire province to all the remote regions to do test drives with the public at events. After, when COVID started, we started doing one-on-one appointments. You could book online, show up at your house, the car sanitized, all that stuff. And the Steel Auto Group jumped on, and it was this one particular guy. And this is where the group's kind of innovative. There's a gentleman called Peter Porteous, and he's VP of Business Development. And he's not from the car world, but his sole job is to look at where the industry's going and where they can grow and what they can develop and kind of own the market in. And he's like, man, electric cars, the writing's on the wall. Anybody pulls their head out of the sand can see, oh man, this is going to be big. And this was like 3 years ago. So they jumped in, they supported, and I'd worked with them for those 2 years. And then we, always kept in contact. And the Steel Auto Group wasn't always 62 dealerships. Like 3 years ago, there were 39 dealerships. 10 years ago, it was 16 dealerships. So they're on this like insane growth, the path, and they're acquiring dealerships. So, we certainly didn't intend on selling after less than 2 years, but COVID made it quite challenging. And I think, in hindsight, we didn't have anybody from the dealership world out of the four of us. No one knew what they were doing in terms of dealerships. which is kind of what you need. So it made a lot of sense for us. So that's a really roundabout way to say there's no one person that approached. It was a relationship that was already there.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. It's. I had a conversation after a meeting in Victoria one time with two guys from Jimmy Pattison. They were saying they're looking pretty dumb and happy. I'm like, you guys want to think about this a bit more? Oh no, we're good. We're good. So
Yeah, I mean,
perhaps that's an opportunity there. Somebody smart can go to Jimmy Pattison and say, hey, you need to move on. But that's another topic. Yeah, well, I'm gonna open it to anybody else who's got a question for Jeremie. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got two quick questions. One is, have you only got the one area in Nova Scotia? And also, is there a group similar to this one operating in Nova Scotia? I've got a very good friend I've known since the 60s. Seen him once or twice in that time, but we're contact a lot. And he started asking me EV questions once I bought the Ioniq, and I had nowhere to aim him in your direction. So
yeah, great questions. So write this down. EVAAC, EVAC, Electric Vehicle Association of Atlantic Canada. On Facebook, it's a pretty huge group, tremendous community, and lots of people to answer their questions. And then also send them to evassist.ca. It's a great website that has lots of information, really in-depth FAQs on, a lot of the hard questions in the world of EVs. And lastly would be nextride.com if he wants to test drive some EVs without it being tied directly to a dealership with no sales pressure. They'll show up at his house and do the test drive with him, with a variety of cars. And then your last question was is it only one in the province? Yes, at this moment, it's only one. I don't think we'll go into another, I won't have a second one in Nova Scotia for some time. I'll probably make sure that this store does proper numbers first. It has really strong sales. I need to be pumping out a lot more cars per month for me to justify a second location. It's more of a space that, it's easy to sell cars just out of a corner of a shop or corner of a little place, but to have a full shop that can do all of the work on these EVs, it takes really substantial investments and size, and you need to be able to do volume. And it doesn't make sense for us to, Nova Scotia is a really small. It'd be like having multiple EV, large EV dealerships on Vancouver Island, when 10 years ago.
yeah.
Right, that's that's kind of the
Okay,
situation.
that's great. Yeah, he lives in Big Pond, but he knows Dartmouth. He went to university there and so forth. He knows the area, so I don't think it would be a problem for him to check that out. So thanks very much.
Jerry.
Jeremie, wonderful presentation. Félicitations d'un francophone à un autre. A question about infrastructure. What's it like now in the Maritimes? I've read about people driving out and saying, wow, I almost ran out of juice because I couldn't find anywhere to charge.
Well, I mean, they need plug share, first of all, because you'll never see the signs on the road. But our infrastructure as of 2017, started existing. We had 2 DCFCs in the entire province. And then in 2017, we got some funding. Actually, I won't dive into this, but we don't have a Crown Corp that owns our utility. Our utility is privately run by Emera. So then they make money off infrastructure. So they can't keep growing the infrastructure. So there's conflict of interest. So it's really a crazy puzzle in Nova Scotia to grow the infrastructure. But right now, we do have 22 DCFCs across the province. The furthest gap between them is 125 kilometers. A lot of them are around the 90-kilometer gap between. We still have 2 gaps in the province that aren't filled. We have 1 Tesla supercharging station with 2 or 3 more to come in the next year. So it's a work in progress. There's been some good grants recently for tackling barriers to EV ownership. Funny enough, all of my staff don't have the ability to charge at home. Not all of my staff, but 80% of my staff, they can't charge at home. They're in multi-unit residential buildings, they're in apartments, they're in townhouses they don't own. So getting grants for workplace charging. Now, thankfully, they can charge here at work, but for others that don't work for an electric vehicle dealer. So there's workplace charging, there's tourism, there's multi-unit residential. So there's funding for level 2s, and for level 3s, there will be another wave of DCFCs. I would assume provincially at some point in the near future. But our municipality here, HRM, Halifax Regional Municipality, is one of the most ambitious municipalities in the country when it comes to terms of climate change, which is a breath of fresh air. They want 100% EV. What do they call that? As ZEV mandate, a zero emission vehicle mandate for the municipality of 100 by 2030. Like, that's crazy aggressive. And they're going to install hundreds of DCFC in the municipality over the next 10 years. So this is coming from, right now we have 2 DCFCs in the entire municipality, and our municipality is gigantic. Like, I think we have the second largest or the largest municipality in the country, because anyways, so lots of changes on that space, and our network is growing. Newfoundland's getting better as well. They went from 0 to 14, and they have 19 more coming. So it's coming along.
Jeremy, I've got a couple of questions. First two are, when do you sleep, and why are you making so many of us feel like we haven't accomplished anything? We do an annual event out here called Eco Night, which puts EVs in front of about 7,000 people. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can get one of your cutaways out here for it in March. And that's just a thing to think about. But Steel doesn't have any dealerships in BC, I don't think.
No, not yet. It would cost it'd be about $10,000 to get it out there. So not easily is the answer to that. Without some strong provincial grants, you'll have to wait till I open a store in BC.
Okay. No,
I still have a couple cars that are
able to ship cars from like Toronto area for about $2,000. So maybe we can do it cheaper.
Yeah, you have to ship a whole container for this though, not just the car.
Okay.
right. And the cars don't move, so you can't put them on car haulers since there's no, you'd have to get humans to push it up and down. So it does.
What about the Model 3 engine cutaway?
Yeah, it weighs about 380 pounds. So that also is kind of challenging. I mean, the easiest thing is if I just, opened a store in Alberta or
exactly.
And then make my way out there, all in due time, right? Like right now, we're still kind of getting our bearings. We moved to the store a month ago, and I didn't sleep for quite some time with the move. That was an unexpectedly large.
You have a family?
If the question was, do I have a family? I don't have kids. I don't have time for kids right now. In the future, who knows? And again, it's important to remember it's a whole team. It's not just me, right? The EV Association, it's not me. We have a whole board of directors. We have a whole bunch of volunteers. We have, all the co-founders, and for the business here, it's not just me. It is a gargantuous amount of work. But I think we've been blessed with being at the right place at the right time with really brilliant minds on our team to, pivot and keep moving forward. And so a lot of that comes down to good luck and being prepared for it, and maybe lacking sleep a little bit too.
Jeremy, I have a question of you, or a comment, I suppose, really. It's interesting that the chicken and egg game came early all over the country, and it's just arrived in your part of this country. One of the big things you're going to have to solve is the public charging, because range anxiety still bump into that, even in Victoria and Vancouver and so on, which is kind of odd, but there you go. A lot of it is back pushed from the ICE owners and we call monkey wrench people. But anyway, I certainly wish you well in setting it up out there, but you really got to solve the range anxiety thing. And a lot of it is having sufficient public access to second level or even third level eventually in your area. It's still a problem in some parts of the Victoria, but it's mostly solved in Santa Cruz. Has got to put in 20 more. We've got a lot around here now. But it took a lot of the chickens running around before they put any chicken feed, and it's been difficult to get things off the ground that way. Well, I certainly wish you luck. If you'd like to move something to Alberta, why don't you try Fort McMurray? No, okay.
But I appreciate the kind words and your comment on range anxiety and charging. There's a lot of brilliant minds working on that right now, and myself, I think about this all the time, and I dive into this is something for all of you guys to think of as well in BC, and it's really diving into the nuts and bolts of it. Think about what if the government allocates X amount of dollars, whatever, $1 million. To increase charging in the province. What's the actual best way to spend that money? What's your goal? What's the net outcome, right? Like, what are the results that we're looking for? Is it, and especially if, you got to have a whole lens of everything that's coming. Which gentleman had the Ionic earlier? Was that Art? I was talking about the Ionic. I don't know if it's Ionic 5 or the original OG Ionic.
Yeah, the original.
The original OG over here, nice. But the Ionic 5 has 250 kilowatt charging. The new GMC Sierra EV has 350 kilowatt charging. We're seeing a lot more of the 800 volt architecture. So how do we start planning ahead for all these vehicles that are coming down the pipe, right? Like by the time we do an RFP or apply to get funding with the government, and we get money allocated, and we do the all the legal agreements, and then we have the program ready to launch, and then we start looking for sites. Okay, so a year and a half has passed at least, right? At least a year and a half, and then by the time those are installed, that's about another 18 months. So you're looking at pretty much 3 years. So in 3 years, well, we're going to be at the start of 2025. What are we going to be in 2025? So we got to start thinking, okay, well, that $1 million in 2025, how do we best, spend it? Is it by having, well, I think having, the 800 volt architecture for your charger, there's a lot of advantages to that. I think Kelly probably knows a lot more about it than me in terms of how they can work together, but, having the ability to have multiple chargers share a load and like I know ChargePoint right now, you can have a 62.5 kilowatt charger, and if there's 2 of them and there's 1 car, then you can, and if it's on the 800 volt system, you can get 125 kilowatts. So maybe and having redundancy, and Kelly being in this space for a long time, love to hear your thoughts on this, Kelly. But when a charger goes down, like it was down in Kamloops in 2015 for like 7 months or something, you got to have redundancy. But Kelly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, if you had $1 million to spend for something in 2025, how would you spend it?
Well, it's interesting because before we started today, we were just talking about how CHAdeMO is obsolete, and starting that planning process now, as of June 2021, CHAdeMO is not required on stations, which will change the way people interact with stations, because when you're talking 2025, now you're talking plug and charge. You don't have to pull your credit card out to start a charge. A lot of the problems people have right now with trying to get charging started, if you plug in your CCS card and then take more than 90 seconds to get through the billing procedure, the car time's out. There's all these problems that are kind of caused because of the legacy stuff. And so we need to be aware that we need to start building new types of systems, like you say. So you do the power sharing, you do plug and charge. We have to forget about CHAdeMO people, even though I'm one of those CHAdeMO people, just to make the system move ahead to where we need to be. In BC, we're looking at the utilities and the Ministry of Transportation and the municipalities, they're going to install 500 chargers by 2025, but we need 4,000. So we need to be looking at that. And as like you say, like you're doing the funding application now for the 2025 infrastructure. And if we build it like we did yesterday, people that show up with their brand new car in 2025, they'll be saying, this is awful. Why are we doing this, right? So we need to think about that maybe some of us early adopters will have to go through some growing pains, but in order for the people that arrive in 2025 with their brand new car, get a good experience.
One thought that I had, and I'm guilty very much of range anxiety. My whole life I've been involved with emergency planning and always drive on the top half of the tank. And I know that doesn't work very well with the ionic batteries. But anyway, I still have it. I have a level 2 charger at home, just 20 amps, because that's all I had left in my breaker box. But I have found that and I live out in the middle of nowhere. I'm 10K from my nearest store, 15K from 2 shopping centers. But in those 2 shopping centers, there are 6 outlets, charging outlets that are free, supplied by the shopping center. And that might be, it brings customers in, because the biggest shopping center, Royal Oak, doesn't have any, but across the street at the other one, there's 4 outlets, and then there's one up at the Peninsula Co-op that's with a couple outlets there. And they've got cars in there, I would say 60 to 70% of the time, which gives me at least enough time when I'm doing a bit of shopping to recharge everything I used up to get there, and sometimes a little more to get back. So it might be an idea to just some words to the shopping centers. You know, do you need to drag customers from the guy across the street? So just a thought.
Yeah, you know, you're right. It's a multi-pronged approach, right? There's no one approach that solves it all. And if you look at charging into the future, you know, whether it's solving some of the issues that Kelly was mentioning, but also finding ways that are cost efficient, right? So if you look at Quebec and their mandate to install 1,600 fast chargers in the province by 2027, they're starting to install 4 chargers at a time, and they pre-build the bases for them, and it's just craned in, bing bang. You know, they're finding ways to make it more efficient. And you know, installing a DCFC, the latest round in New Brunswick, it was 140 grand per unit. It's crazy expensive. And if there's ways to kind of minimize those costs, where, you know, you install 2 chargers, they can load share, they can charge at 800 volts, they can do all sorts of things, and you can add, you know, power as you go on, right? In some of those cabinets, depending on the brand, right? Like the BTC and ChargePoints can do that. Flow can't, that I know of. But you know, you start looking at what's your cost per plug, right? And because the installation cost is massive on those. And when you start doing things a lot bigger, and here's an example, the metal cabinets, right? The big metal cabinets that you'll see close to the DCFC, but not next to it. That's where a lot of the guts of the step down transformers and all that stuff are. You know, when you're doing a small number of DCFCs at a time in New Brunswick, and in PEI, they had to get them custom made at a cost of like $8,500 per. It's a metal box for $8,000. It's not like bulletproof. It's like, you know, it's a thin metal thing, but it's because you're doing 8 stations. But if you start kind of having a more ubiquitous format and shape, and you're looking at how do we really roll this out long term, you know, it's a really hard puzzle. But anyways, something to think about.
Yeah. What's the Don here? I'm actually from Liverpool. I wonder, do you have any? I think White Point Lodge has a couple of level 2s, don't they? Or do they?
No, they're terrible too. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, but they won't even allow anyone to plug in the 110. They just don't get it. Are
you serious?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. The association has been ranting.
That's where Don came from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm not surprised in some respects.
But there's a fast charger in Liverpool.
Oh, is there? Oh, good. And so where else? How about down the coast? What about in Shelburne, Yarmouth, Weymouth?
Both of those. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that should eliminate the range anxiety for people in that case.
It's a small province.
Yes.
And it's great. And New Brunswick, was earlier on in the game. So a lot of the tourism from Quebec and from the States all connects. They have wonderful Tesla supercharging and DCFCs. They've got 35 DCFCs for the province. And, you know, it's not a populous province, and it
No.
only has a few main arteries for roads. Same thing with Newfoundland, right? It's a big
Yeah.
province, but it's one road. So as long as you've got gaps of less than 150 kilometers, unless you're Art white knuckling the drive going 70 an hour, no heat, you know, you'll be fine. And
My Leaf won't do 150, so gotta get it down to 100.
well, you gotta have the right car for the right application, right? And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to drive a 1,000-kilometer drive in a Nissan Leaf first
No,
generation.
I wouldn't
right?
either. No, we live in
right
in
car for the right
Victoria.
application, right?
Yeah,
and
no,
but I love the Leaf in the
I
city.
just tell everybody it's a city car.
Exactly.
You know, it's not a car for going across the country. It's a city car for running around the city, and it's perfect for that. And that's what we use it for.
And what it was
How
designed
much
to
of an
do.
issue? Yeah, how much of an issue is it in the Maritimes? And I remember, you know, back I left in the early 70s, and I remember at Christmas, one year they weren't allowed to have Christmas lights because of the strain on the power system. So you don't have the backup power supports and the infrastructure that BC Hydro has or Ontario or Quebec Hydro have. And I'm wondering how much of that is a limitation on their ability to put in these 400 or 800 kilowatt charging stations.
Well, before I answer that, I just want to check in with Jim and Glenn that I'm taking up more time than was allotted, and I don't want to hijack this. So Glenn, after I answer this, you can cut me off and tell me to go. But I'll just answer this one. I'll just answer this one. We now have Muskrat Falls, which is this, it's like Site C Dam. It's controversial as well, but we actually need it. That's the difference. We, you know, Newfoundland, we have a lot of excess power now, and it's cleaner power compared to, you know, fossil fuels. Now, that being said, there is still a peak. There's about 40 hours per year. Last time I was talking to NL Hydro, there's 40 hours of the year where they're actually at capacity. They have an excess amount of energy year round by like, is it gigawatts or terawatts? It's just, it's a gargantuous number. It's a huge excess capacity, but they're still constrained 40 hours of the year that they're just completely tapped out. And Nova Scotia, not so much, but Quebec actually last week. And Glenn, I don't know if you're on my LinkedIn, if you have the chance to get the link from LinkedIn, there's this hilarious memes that came from Hydro-Quebec where they actually hit their all-time peak of energy usage. It was really cold. They're electrifying everything in the province. And Hydro-Quebec has a phenomenal marketing campaign, team. And they made all these memes that are just hilarious. It's so good. Because there's a lot of public backlash against EVs. But all to say, the Christmas light stuff, that doesn't exist anywhere in Atlantic Canada. And as long as we see more pilots for smart charging programs being rolled out, which we have some in Nova Scotia, there's some coming to Newfoundland. And as we start again, and as I was saying a little bit, my mind's in the future very much so for adoption. And as we have very high percentage of adoption, you know, in 10 years or 5 years, there's going to be some tremendous constraints on the grid if it's not managed in a very smart way. But charging your vehicle at home, having intelligent time of day rates, having demand response technology where you can curtail certain chargers, and Kelly knows tons about this stuff and has worked with Power Tech Labs on pilots, looking at ways to curtail power from chargers and things like that. You know, I think our grid is fine, you know, across the country as long as it's intelligently managed. And that's where having incentives for level 2 chargers that are smart and connected and fit within the criteria required by utility to be able to do some demand response things. I don't see a problem with going, you know, full tilt with EVs in the future. It just has to be managed smartly.
Yeah, there was a study that came out just recently. They figured to take all of Canada to EVs, light duty vehicles, we'd have to increase our capacity by 11% across Canada. Of course, we have to be able to share across Canada too, which is another thing. Thank you, Jeremie. That was awesome. We usually have a bio break here for about 5 minutes so people can do that sort of thing. And yeah, you're welcome to, of course, sit by and kibitz on the side or get to your dinner.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time here and welcoming me and letting me blab on for this whole time. It's 6 p.m. here and I got to run home in a sec, so I won't be able to join for longer. But thank you very much for listening in and letting me share my story. Please do check out our site, allev.ca. I'll put it in the comments. And Glenn, if you're able to share that link to those memes on of Hydro-Quebec, it was too good. It's too good not to share. But thank you so much, everybody. And I'll also put my email address in the chat. If anybody wants to reach out at any point, please do.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Seeing as how it's just chatting here and I hopefully not interfering anybody, I saw one of the coolest videos a month or so ago, the 10-1000 challenge. Has anybody seen that one? It's the Ioniq 5. I think it's in Norway and Sweden, doing 1,000 kilometers in 10 hours. Really well done. A lot of comments about the car, a few things he didn't like, but the coolest thing was when he pulled in to refuel at one of the stations, he was refueling right in front of a great big Volvo semi-tractor that was taking on electrons at the same rate as his Ioniq 5 was, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, the 10-1000 challenge, I think it was called. It's worth Googling. I really enjoyed it.
Is that Bjorn Nyland?
Sorry, what was that?
Is that Bjorn Nyland?
Yeah, it might have been. I don't remember the name. That sounds like it, but I think so.
Yeah, well, he's a little tiny Asian guy. He's is it Norwegian?
Yeah, it was in Norway and Sweden, I think, where it was done.
Yeah.
But I found it really.
He does a lot of great videos.
Yeah.
Well, I seem to have the floor. One thing that I think is critically important is putting particularly level 3 charge stations or DC fast chargers in one area and not spreading them around town. Because it's not so bad here in Victoria, but there's one station in Duncan, and somebody said the other day, oh, we should have one in Mill Bay. No, you should have another one in Duncan, because Mill Bay is only a 15-minute drive away. But I was coming back from Nanaimo, and I stopped in Ladysmith, and there's a level 2 charger there. Then there's a couple of chargers, DC fast chargers at the airport, and they're not even they're close to each other, but they're not side by side. And then I got down to Duncan. I thought, I'm not going to make it home, so I had to stop. There's only one there, but if the next one was in Mill Bay, you got to take a chance of going there. Can you drive in and there's a lineup for this one? I'll check the other one. Oh, that one's broken, so you got to drive back. And in that process, you're using up what electrons you have. And that's where Tesla does it so right, is that I don't think they have any depots where you can charge that are less than 8 stations. So you get in there, if there's a lineup or one broken, you're fine. Stefan says only 4.
We had a situation that was brought to our attention this morning here in Nanaimo. We had a small coffee gathering, a few of us on Zoom today, and where someone was in the lower mainland, and they went to a level 3, they said that was a flow, and it was only coming in at like 20 some odd kilowatts, and it's supposed to be, or volts, I always get them confused. Anyways, it turned out they contacted Flow, and Flow said, oh, you have to contact the store, the retail store where it is. And they said, but hold on, they actually have walked it back. So that you stay there longer, paying by the minute.
Oh.
And I was like, has anyone else heard of anything like that?
The reason that they'll do that is because they have to pay demand charges. And that's $5 per kilowatt, depending on the service contract they have with BC Hydro. So they probably found that out later, and it's costing them $3,000 a month to hand out $20 worth of electricity.
Right, okay.
Yeah, demand charges is something that I know Hydro is thinking about, but they need to stop freaking thinking and get rid of them in the EV charging sphere, because it's stupid. and it holds things back.
Well, our,
But Glenn, you can't expect companies and service stations or whatever are putting these things in to be the ones subsidizing EV owners.
Well, no, it's not that. It's not about subsidizing. It's about expanding and getting us into a new pathway. And if it's a private company, that's something else. Here we have a crown corporation that's, supposed to be, it's not a profit making, it's supposed to make back its money.
No,
But, you've got to be able to turn around and there are smart ways to get rid of demand charges too. You go buy a battery bank that's trickling all the time. That'll keep you below the demand charge limit. There are smart ways to do this, and choking you.
but that's going to cost you, tens of thousands of dollars to install that as well.
Yeah,
I mean, it's these things we have to appreciate as EV owners, that it's very expensive to put in DC chargers. And then the payback on those things, I don't know if there's any expectations of payback on them, or at least, they got to have payback, and they're not going to have payback for some time. With the
okay,
low
but
rate of usage.
look at it as a loss leader. So if
hydro doesn't
charging
need loss
happens at
leaders.
home, then what you're doing is when you have a DCFC that allows people to travel out for the 10% of the charging they may do outside of the home, you're actually creating more demand for the product that you produce at BC Hydro. It's a loss. We do tons of other stuff like that.
we have another one up here that nobody goes to anymore. It's a level 2 at Dodds Furniture. It's a charge point, two plug station. And they put a fee on it of $2 an hour with the first hour of parking for free, and then $5 an hour after that. So works out to, $7 an hour after the first hour, which is $2. So it's like, so nobody goes there anymore.
Well, how much time do you need to spend at Dodds?
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, it's across the street from where I live, and I'm in a condo where I haven't got charging. So it was convenient for me. So
yeah, but the Dodds didn't put it in to be convenient for you. They put it in to draw people there. So if you're coming in while you're there, you can charge up, not to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly their point. Yeah, I went and talked to the manager about it. And,
But if the city or some entity decide to put in chargers for people who level 2, for people who are garage orphans, that they should charge them a reasonable rate, and they should all be in one spot.
Yeah, I see where Saanich, you guys had the thing the other day about the new charging stations going in, and what was it, $2 an hour or $1 an hour, however it was, whatever it was.
$1 an hour, yeah.
$1 an hour. Yeah.
How does that say $1 an hour, $2 an hour, or whatever? How does that relate roughly to cost per kilowatt hour?
Good question.
Same as bottled water costs compared to getting water at home.
So if it is kicking out 6.5 kilowatts for an hour at level 2, that's 65 cents at home rates, roughly. So they're making a little money.
But the installation cost of those things is pretty substantive for Saanich. And I mean, I just walked by one an hour ago, an hour and a half ago now, and there's one car sitting in the one at the Cedar Hill Golf Course, and there's 3 empty stations. And very rarely when they had 2, it was, I'd bet you, more than 2/3 of the time, there's only 1 at most being used. So, putting on the charger, some people used to, take it and leave it there for hours at a time. That doesn't happen so much anymore. It's people going out, play around a golf, or going out to hiking the trails that come over. So, but the Saanich, I mean, I can find out, we should find out from them how much it costs per unit to put those in. My guess is probably $6,000 or $7,000 per unit that's costing.
$10,000 per port.
How much?
$10,000 per port. So
even for level 2?
For a level 2, it's $10,000 per port. And if you have a dual headed port, it costs about $20,000. For 50 kilowatt DC fast charge, it's about $100,000 minimum.
Okay.
For a 350 kilowatt station, it's about $500,000.
Wow.
That's
So
good time,
these
Kelly, for you
stations
to
that
do.
Tesla's putting in, with a dozen places in them, what do they cost?
I missed that.
The Tesla stations where they have a dozen chargers, like at Uptown, where they got 9, 10, 12 chargers there. What does it cost to put them in? About 6 or 7 million?
Probably 3 million.
Yeah. Wow.
And where they save money is because they're only digging up the asphalt once. And so the labor costs go way down.
Yes. But you have to have a hydro feed, a heat feed from hydro strong enough in that area to get in and feed those stations.
Yeah, so that's what the first year of design does. They go through and get all the design work done, knowing where they're going to get power from and how far they have to pull wire.
It would make sense to me for the provinces, whatever, and Nova Scotia's situation in particular, to focus on partnering with Tesla, who knows what they're doing, and install the Tesla chargers. And I understand there are some Tesla chargers going in now that have CCS tails as well. So they could be, dual purpose, dual vehicle, whatever chargers, and would be open to everybody to use, except for us CHAdeMO people who are going to phase it out anyway.
Yeah, so what was happening is about 2 years ago, Tesla went to the federal government and said, why can't we get any of the grant money that you're handing out for installing infrastructure? And the federal government said, if you install CHAdeMO and SAE combo connectors in a ratio of 25% compared to the Tesla supercharger connectors, then you would be supporting not just your own vehicles, but everybody's vehicles. And we would pay 50% of your funding to install those charging stations. So Tesla has been installing flow charging stations with CCS and CHAdeMO at their new stations in a ratio of about 25%, and it moves around a little bit depending on whether they're going through provincial money that came from the federal money or directly with federal money. So, but starting as of June 2021, they no longer need to support CHAdeMO. So that was where I was talking at the beginning of the meeting, that since June 2021, new funding applications do not need to support CHAdeMO. So I don't think it'll affect deployments this coming summer. We'll still see like at least one CHAdeMO connector per site that gets set up. But after this coming summer, I would expect that most sites will not have any CHAdeMO connectors added. And in about 3 to 4 years, the existing CHAdeMO stations will start to fail and need to be replaced or upgraded. And at that time, we will start to see some attrition of CHAdeMO connectors at sites. So we won't. So in 5 years' time, it may not be feasible to try to take a Nissan Leaf with a CHAdeMO connector on a long distance road trip, and expecting to be able to use the fast charging network.
Do we have any data on how frequently the CHAdeMOs are even being used? Like I've had my Leaf for 4 years now. I've never used it.
Yeah, there's lots of use of the CHAdeMO connectors today.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, and especially with Tesla's being able to use their CHAdeMO adapters, that they're using the CHAdeMO connectors.
Can I say a word about connection here? I found that a number of people around here who have CHAdeMO things are people who have an older home or an apartment or a condo where the members have not agreed to have a charger installed, regardless of the nice boost that the municipality can give them to do it up. There is another answer, which is a favorite of mine at the moment and has never gone anywhere, is the stove buddy approach. I live in a house, the core of which is very old. So it's a small panel. I couldn't take another high charge on my panel. But if you could use a stove buddy, I could do it here. People I know of that have to go to a public charger because they can't handle it in their house could do the same thing. They could simply use a stove buddy attached to their system, and they can charge at least the second level. It's made in the States. It's patented in the States, I guess. But I've been inquiring with the officials here once in a while, how do we get it usable and approved in Canada or in BC, at least is my current concern. And I'm not getting anywhere with any answers or who to talk to or anything. It just goes dead. They don't respond.
Well, I think the manufacturer has to apply to get the CCS standard, and it's a cost associated in that. And the guy that makes these basically makes them in his garage.
That's right.
Very small operation. So for him, it's not worthwhile for him to spend thousands of dollars to put it through the CCS standard to, or whatever it's called, the King's CSA standard to get approval.
Gary?
But there is an alternative to that as well. There's another system you can put into your box that does the same thing. I forget the name of that, but the guy from Edwards Electric spoke about it years ago.
Available now?
I want to address that because I have a device in my garage. It's called a load miser.
That's it.
It happens to be made in Alberta. It's CSA approved. It was installed by my professional electrician, and it installs on a 40 amp circuit, which is usually a range. In our case, it's the cooktop in our kitchen. And this thing has a little bit of smarts in there. It gives preference to the cooktop as opposed to the car. So if you come home and you plug your car and it starts charging and you decide to go and do some cooking, the load miser will say, hey, wait a minute, car, we want to do some cooking here. Take a break. When we're done cooking, you can resume charging. So ask your electrician about a load miser. I had to do this because I had a full panel and I couldn't add any more circuits. And the real advantage of this, of course, is that you don't increase your peak load. You'll never draw more than what you ought to be dry. So you're not making it worse for BC Hydro.
Yeah, no, I understand how it works. It's great to have heard. It's too bad it's taken until now to hear that name. Nobody was volunteering to me when I questioned about the stove buddy and talked about, they never mentioned that other one, the alternative that presumably you can still get and improve.
Well, you got it now, write it down.
That's down.
Well, and two, you can just get switches, high amperage switches, so that you just manually go over and flip it from one to the other. And then you go to cook, oh, the stove's not working. Oh, I got to take the car off charge. So there's no smarts involved, and it doesn't take much more than a couple of hours of an electrician to switch it.
Yeah, but I think
it was the same thing for the load miser.
Smarts up to me. I thought it happened automatically.
The other thing that's you're missing in this is that when you have a dryer, it has a rating of 25% of what power it can actually take. And so when you start to put an EV charger on, you now have to do your load calculations on your panel with that plug being used 100% of the time. So that's where it needs to be thought of as an engineered solution. And you can't just go get a CSA sticker on it to say it's approved to move a plug when your house may be already at its peak limit. And if you start running a EV charger at 100% of that 32 amp circuit, you may overload your panel, not the line going to the charger, but your main breaker panel might have a problem.
Yeah, I'm aware of all these things. I've got an apartment-sized dryer. There's only two of us living in the house, so we don't need a great big dryer. But it's all right. I know how to do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All I have to do is hear somebody tell me this is available.
Yeah.
So here's a quick question. Will the main breaker pop if you overload the panel, or is it designed that the panel will overload before the main breaker goes?
It sounds like something I'm not going to answer.
No, who was it just talking a minute ago about this?
With the load miser, Jerry might be able to address that.
No, I'm just wondering, I imagine, if I was designing the system, the main breaker would pop before the panel was damaged. Is that not the way it's designed?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the role of the main breaker. but the role of the load miser is to prevent you from drawing too much on any one circuit.
Don't think I'm on my main.
So your panel is designed to be able to handle a dryer and a range. And all that this load miser does is that if the range is not used, you can charge the car. If you want to cook, it just cuts off the car. In fact, what I found is that I can do both as long as 40 amps is not exceeded. And so if I'm, because the car is not drawing 40 amps, it wants a 40 amp circuit, but it doesn't draw 40 amps. And so I can have the car charging and just one burner going. And as long as the load miser says, hey, you're under 40 amps, it's cool. So this is the kind of thing that you don't do yourself. You get a professional electrician to buy it and install it for you, and there's no problem.
Right. So
Now, I have a question for Kelly about the Tesla chargers for non-Tesla cars. How are the non-Tesla owners charged when they want to charge up the car?
You're talking at the superchargers with CCS and those.
Yes, sir.
You use your Flow account. They've hired Flow to install chargers on their site, on their power.
I see. So we're not there yet where you can use your credit card, except at Canadian Tire and Petro-Canada.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
I think what'll happen with Tesla is you'll do what every Tesla owner does, is that you have a running account through your credit card at Tesla. So as long as your car can talk to the charger, to the DCFC, then it'll go to your credit card. When that happens.
So to finish up the conversation about the breaker panel being overloaded, you're not supposed to use the main breaker as part of your system. That is the last resort, and you're not supposed to rely on that. That's supposed to happen automatically as if something has gone wrong. So that's kind of why they say that if you've overloaded your panel, that's a bad thing, and you're not supposed to use the main breaker as well. The main breaker didn't trip, so therefore everything's good.
That's correct. And that's why the load miser is a necessary device if you want to charge your car.
Until next month when I release my stuff.
You keep saying that. You're like Elon.
Yeah.
If I could throw an
Just
announcement in
another
here.
2 weeks, right, Kelly?
Sorry?
Just another 2 weeks.
Yeah, just another couple of weeks.
So if I could
So I
throw
do
a
have a
quick
solution
announcement
for
in here.
single-family homes, which would mean you install a OCPP charger, and then you hook it up to my OCPP server and buy a rainforest automation device that talks to your electric meter, and then you can view how much energy you're using on your phone and on the web and stuff. But the charger would also see that energy and decide how much power you can charge at any time during the day based on either the price of electricity when time of use comes in, or making sure that you don't come anywhere near your peak power.
I could throw an announcement in here from Mid-Island. We've got a Zoom coming up on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And it's what's current and upcoming in the rapidly changing EV world. And our guest speaker will be Michael Stanier from Emotive. So you can get to this on our website, islandev.org.
And that's the same time as the Vancouver one.
Is it on Tuesday? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you overlap with Vancouver quite a bit. I didn't come to yours this morning because 10 till 12 on Saturdays is Vancouver.
Ah, okay.
And 7 till 9 on Tuesdays is Vancouver.
Ah, very good.
But Larry, yours are always much more interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, do you feature hydrogen?
No. But it's interesting. part of the conversation was from me this morning. It was because I just learned through Edwards Electric, because they're doing our EV ready plan for our condo. And we have four
great.
buildings. And we have 4 buildings. And they gave me a rough estimate of what it's going to cost. So, because I'm the treasurer for the Strata Council. So we're going into budget meetings this week. Well, after rebates, we're going to have to come up with $300,000 to be EV ready. That'll be a tough one. We've got about a third of the owners say within the next 5 years they're going to have purchasing EVs, but I don't think that's going to be enough to get us doing that. So we're actually seriously looking now at the Plugzio option. You know, that'll be the route to go probably.
How many owners?
229. And they told us it'd be about $1,600 per parking stall, of which we get about $600 rebate. And that 1,600 is before taxes. So
That's a good price if everybody wants one.
that's right. Yeah. But to get the, this was the one thing I just learned. We can't go in and say, okay, we only want 30% of our parking stalls to be set up. It has to be not 100% of the parking stalls, but 100% based on the number of units. So there's 229 condos. There has to be 229 parking stalls. So, or we might have 400 parking stalls in the buildings. We still have to do 229 across it. So it's.
How much power sharing are they suggesting you do?
We haven't got that far in it. I just wanted to get some, because they're working on the EV ready plan. They're going to have it for us probably in the next couple of weeks. But because of our budget meeting and getting ready for our AGM, I needed to get some rough numbers just to go into the budget meeting first.
I think it should be about 1,000, not 1,600 is my guess. So
well, that was Craig from Edwards. That's what
Edwards,
he emailed me and told me. Yeah.
Well, you know, you guys are preparing yourself for the future, because at some point here, when people start looking for somewhere to live and buy, if they see a place they can't charge, they just won't bother looking.
Well, and you're absolutely right, because I was talking to our real estate agent recently, and she commented that, because she knows we drive EV, and she commented that she gets asked that regularly now. Is this condo, are they EV? Okay, let's look somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
and they're saying now that it's
Even in this hot real estate market.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would not have thought that.
Yeah, I didn't either, but it just was what she mentioned.
Yeah.
And also,
well, if it saves you $2,000 a year by not buying gas,
yeah.
You know, duh, let's work it out.
Yeah, we got.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that condo over there.
Our condo though is mostly senior citizens. So they're on their last car basically. So I won't be getting an EV. They don't see the value of how it will increase the value of their unit when they go to sell. Because right now it's about, Edwards told me this, it's about $5,000 if the infrastructure is in place. And if you actually have a charge station at your parking stall, it increases your value by about 10,000 on each unit. So
yeah.
I'm not concerned about how much more valuable my house is going to be, because that's what my kids get, not me.
yeah. And that's
Yeah, the kids fight over the one house.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not going to, they won't care whether I get 999,000 or another 10, 20 grand out of it.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Dad died. It's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I gotta go. I really enjoyed this and learning something all the time. Ciao.
Me as well. I've got to run. So take care, folks. I see Don's got his hand up there. So
I'll take that down.
you have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Larry.
You too.
See you on Tuesday.
Thanks, Larry.
Glenn, why does your dog's head keep disappearing?
She's a stealth dog, you know.
You need a green screen.
That's right.
You can't see her chewy bits coming at you.
Ah.
Aha.
So there it is.
Yeah, Don.
I have a little bit of Tesla news, which
Let's
some of
hear
you
it.
know, but I'll
You're on.
pass to some of you. So there was some news lately about heat pump fitted Teslas, Model 3s, Model Ys, which would be cars built after October 2020, I think. No,
Maybe 19.
no, 2020.
Mhm.
And some of them haven't been working so well in the sub-zero temperatures. So here on the coast, where we got down to minus 11 Celsius, we had a poll we ran, and the reported problem rate was 2.6%. And then I ran the same sort of poll in the rest of the country, and we got to, and I said, from 12 degrees Celsius down,
Yeah.
got 20%.
Huh.
So it's a real problem, although, whether it's a combination between a physical part and software and sensors. So it's somewhere in all that mix. Tesla's been tossing out over-the-air updates, which some have said have solved their problems, and some indicate they haven't. But anyway, that's the short and sweet on that.
So it's not the actual operating capacity of the, what do they call the thing, Octocon or Octopus, whatever it is?
Octovalve.
Octovalve, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, well, it
I
was.
wonder how they've been making out on the prairies. Manitoba's been like minus 25, minus 30 for 2 weeks now, so.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because a lot of these people, it seemed a lot of the people who were responding were from Quebec and Ontario. And there was other guys on there who are, regular ice mechanics. And they say, yeah, well, we're up to our armpits in ice cars replacing their heating cores as well. So.
Well, one guy commented, he said, all my friends are lighting up my inbox, pointing this out, the failure of the Tesla. But when I had my Mercedes, nobody pointed out the recalls that I had on it, and there was lots of them.
Yeah, and they weren't online.
That was a good graphic you had in the email the other day about the fires by the different types of cars. And I was really surprised with the hybrids that they were much, much higher than everything else, and kind of wondering why that would be.
Gasoline.
But why would
they're cramming a little tiny gas engine and gas tank in where it doesn't belong. Creates more problems.
Which is that?
They're just cramming a small gas engine in where it doesn't belong.
Well, my Prius has a 1.8 liter gas engine, which is a standard size small car engine, if not larger. And it's presented absolutely no problems over the 10 to 12 years we've had it.
Yeah, well, and I've owned 60 different cars, and I've never had one burst into flames.
Mm-hmm.
Only the last 3-4 have been electric.
Well, I suspect most of these are during or at accidents. In accidents, would be my guess.
I asked somebody from.
That's the case for most vehicles. The fire comes after some large dynamic event.
Yes. Yeah.
I asked somebody from Saanich Fire a couple of years ago what their data was on car fires, and he said depends on how many people can't make their payments.
Yeah, you can go to National Fire Prevention Association, I think it is, NFPA in the US.
Yeah.
Download their documents and stuff. They're the ones who, you go to every year with a macabre sense to see, well, how many ice cars burned up this year? And it's, 200,000 plus.
Yeah.
Wow. Back to the thing on charging. A year or so ago, Tesla was introducing something where you had one charger or 2 chargers servicing 6 or 8 cars. and it was specifically for condo applications. And when you plugged in, they were intelligent, so they addressed the cars that needed the biggest charge or had the lowest charge on them. They got priority over someone that was almost all completely charged. So it, you know, managed the load by vehicle and by the need of the vehicle. And I'm wondering if anyone has heard or knows anything about what's happening with them, if those units are available in Canada yet, or even if they're have caught on or being used south of the border.
I stay away from anything that's proprietary. I can't get any information from Tesla, how to control it or how to read them. So I can't use them with non-Teslas. So
I'll say two things about the whole Tesla thing is that any company who wants to be able to share and work with Tesla is welcome to do so. They are choosing not to. And the fact that Tesla has opened up that one site so far in Belgium or whatever it was to charge other cars means that either Tesla has gone out to figure out how those cars work, or those car companies have shared information to allow the Tesla charging site to talk to their cars through the European CCS and work. So, and I'll ask Kelly, is that all OCPP as well?
So OCPP happens from the charging station to the back end office. That all the cars speak CCS, basically, except for Nissan at this point. So once Nissan moves to CCS, just because they're talking CCS, that should make them interoperable between Tesla stations when they have Tesla has support CCS, or Tesla's moving to CCS, working on everybody else's chargers. There have been some issues lately with the Ford Mustang. Because they hadn't done a lot of, Ford Mustang hadn't done a lot of testing, they weren't very interoperable. And so they're doing software updates to make them interoperable.
That's across the counter updates, right?
Yeah.
Is that, who's doing that? Is the charging company doing that, or is Ford upgrading their software?
Ford's upgrading to make them interoperable.
Interesting. Okay.
Stefan was trying to talk and he's muted, or I didn't hear anything.
Just before I check off, I ask some of you electrical experts. If you have a charger, second level, of course, which is hardwired to a nice big panel, can you convert it into a plug-in? And all you would lose is what? The ability to warranty on the original charger, or what? Is there dangers involved? Would you have to add some extra grounding or something?
Technically, there's no issue with putting a plug on a hardwired charger. The only issue that I've ever been made aware of is that they use a different wire that's not meant to be bendable as much. So it's meant to be fixed and not bended as often as a plug-in type that can handle you bending the cord more. So if it's plugged in and stationary, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay.
Why would you want to do it?
Because with the car in 2015, I got a free, quotation marks, charger with it, Bosch. It's quite big, but it doesn't matter where it's hanging. It doesn't matter the size. But I seldom use it because it's at my summer property, not at home. And because of a whole series of reasons, I have not been at the summer property for quite a while, at least not for long enough to need more than one charge when I get there to get me back home again.
Right on. Stefan,
I could perhaps use it at home if I could up the capacity of my panel through the
Power
miner, yep, and wire it that way. I won't necessarily do it because there's bigger questions that have to be answered.
Right.
Right now, we're part of the COVID mess, not directly, but indirectly.
Right
So
on.
I'm not sure where we're gonna go. But if I knew it was possible, other people I know and relations and so on have electric cars as well. And it would be handy if they could plug in slightly more than the basic trickle charger when they came to visit.
Right on, Hank. Thanks for that. Stefan said his mic isn't working. He's asking if the fast charging standard, he's asking, is it not called plug and charge? I have no idea.
Plug and charge is technically, that's the common name that people call the ability to plug the charger into the car and have it automatically start charging by the car exchanging information with the charger via a SSL certificate. So it will know who you are and your account info to bill you. It's also technically known as ISO 15118, and it's part of OCPP 2.0. So it's not the only standard that's being used in the fast chargers. From the fast charger to the car is CCS or CHAdeMO, but there is no CHAdeMO plug-in charge. And then from the charger to the back end to actually take care of billing and accounting type stuff, it's OCPP.
This is a home charger, not.
Thanks, Kelly. Does that help, Stefan?
No,
Yeah.
I won't take up any more of your time. I'll chase it on later if it seems a reasonable thing to do.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Has anybody looked at the initial reviews that Sandy's done on this Hyperion from China? Sandy Monroe, that is?
He seemed to like it. Thought it was well built. He thinks the USA OEMs are big, deep shit over all of the Chinese material that's coming over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, there's no way the US government is going to allow them to ship them in. I expect they'll put an embargo on Chinese imports.
They tried that once with Japan, and that didn't work very well.
I don't think it works. Chinese will do US debt they're holding. I don't think the Americans have any leverage that way left.
Look what they're trying to do with the EV program within the US and with Canada and Mexico, who they have trade agreements with. I can't see them open a door to China because China will just destroy them. The auto industry, at least.
Anything that can't survive competition doesn't deserve to survive competition.
Talking about the Vancouver Canucks again.
So the last thing I'd like to mention is just the about taking credit cards at charging stations, and the current example of how it doesn't work is the Petrocan and Electrify America. When you plug in a CCS car into one of their chargers, because they want you to do that first, the car has 90 seconds until it shuts off when it. And so if you take 90 seconds to get your credit card out and tap it and go through anything you need to get the authorization and then communication to the back end and authorize and back to the charger, if that takes 92 seconds, your car would have went to sleep, and then the charger will say there's no car there, or the car has gone to sleep, so it can't start a charging session. And so that's what a lot of people are noticing now, is that it's taking too long and the car can't charge. Then they have to unplug the car and then plug it back in and then restart the whole billing procedure. And a couple of those times, and then all of a sudden your credit card starts to freak out because it's getting too many pre-auth stations. So that's just something we got to be aware of and what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. I find one of the nicest things about having the Tesla experience supercharging on a long trip is simply that. You get out, you plug in, you check in the window, it starts, you walk away. And the confidence in that and the convenience of it is a really big experience. Like, it's a really positive thing. Mm-hmm. And what you're describing, Kelly, I've experienced that, not the 90-second shut off, but frustration of that feeling of the time of the clock ticking down to zero when you got to get your thing done. And that's
Yeah,
really
currently-
irritating and is
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm amazed that this industry hasn't come up with something better already.
Well,
Kelly?
there is. I would point out there is, but the problem is we're dealing with legacy stuff. The charging station
Yeah.
also has CHAdeMO. The user interface requirements for CHAdeMO are kind of different than what the experience we want to offer people.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
Once we
well, for
move
sure.
away from
Yeah.
that, we'll see a lot better.
Kelly,
Yeah.
you know who Petro-Canada approached to build their system and why they weren't aware of maybe some of those timing limitations?
Yeah, so it's BTC Power, FSEC, and Signet. Had them all build the exact same looking hardware in case there was problems with one. And I think currently the call center is managed by BTC Power.
Right. So they hadn't talked to somebody like you before they decided to do it this way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got to roll myself. I wish you all a great day. Have a wonderful electric vehicle week, and we'll see you next month, if not before.
Right on. Thanks very much, Glenn, for that and hosting the folks. Jim Henshaw's had to leave. He's leaving this the link up for now, but it's got some chainsaw dudes have shown up to tidy up the trees that were blown down in the storm.
In a hockey mask?
Yeah, there's some free shred available at Jim's house right now if you hurry. Wood chips.
See you guys.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
cheerio, and thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Kelly, for your extra contribution there today. It's always very highly appreciated. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
And likewise for everybody else in the contributions, it's always a treat. So I guess we'll be seeing you next time. And Jim was going to update us on the whole show, no doubt. So we're pretty much 3 o'clock. There it is, on time, on schedule.
Yeah, thank
Enjoy.
you, Kelly. Kelly's knowledge is just amazing.
Yes, he's great having him available. Happy motoring, folks.
see you guys.
Cheerio.